Hey up and welcome to another episode of Last Cast. Today you join us back up at Sunrise Lakes. There's a video that we did a couple of weeks ago fishing here, just a couple of pegs further up that way. And we've come back today to try and sort of build on that again. What we did there, we tried to catch a few skimmers, but the temperatures weren't very good and ended up just catching roach and perch. So today, what we've come down here to do is actually try and catch as much sort of weight as we can. Mainly going to be looking for silverfish, the roach, and the perch are probably going to play a big part in it, especially the roach. You might encounter one or two skimmers, so I'm going to put in a line for those as well, a few rudd and things like that, but the bulk of today's video is going to be about catching the most fish. We'll give ourselves probably about 6 hours today and just see exactly what weight we can try and get out. So building on that then, the plan of attack that I'm going to run today is completely different to what I did last time. Last time I think I got it quite wrong. I was fishing too far out, probably putting a bit too much bait on the skimmer lines and kind of spread myself a bit too thin with it. So what I'm going to do today is fish 3 lines. 2 are sort of going to be roach lines and 1 skimmer line that's going to be out the way that I'll just leave and drop on in case I see a few bubbles, but really today I'm going to be looking to catch roach short and down the edge. So I'll quickly run through what I'm going to do for the skimmers first. I'm going to fish at 11.5 metres right out into the lake. Again, bit less distance than we were fishing last time, bit more manageable that distance, but plenty of distance away from me just to leave it. And as I say, I'll drop on that. If we're lucky, we might catch 1 or 2 fish, but again, we'll just have to pan, just see how the session progresses really. What I'm going to do with that is just feed it with a different mix this time, which is going to be pretty much 80% micro pellets, just with a bit of ground bait to help bind it, to get it down in the deep water. As you can see there, it's almost something reminiscent of a method mix, but plenty of pellets in there. And the idea being that I don't want any cloud off the ground baits that I'm using today. Especially for the bream, I don't want any cloud. I want to just focus them on the bottom. So that mix there, swim stim krill, as you can see with the red colour, with some 3mm swim stim pellets. Again, over wetted and then just left exactly how you do a method mix so it gets to the bottom. And over the top of that line, I'm purely going to fish 4mm expander pellets. I've got a few in there, again, swim stim ones with the odd krill one in as well, just a little change. I might feed a few as well, but the odds are those will just be hook baits for that line. As I say, I'm going to feed that with probably 3 balls of the pellets, so quite heavy, and just leave that out the way. My main plan of attack is, as I say, going to be roach short today. So I'm going to fish at 5 metres, and I've just got a couple of rigs set up for that, which I'll show you now. But actually, I'll run through the ground bait first. The plan of attack with that line is going to be kind of similar to what we did last time, because it turned out I was getting a lot of bites, but I was missing a few as well. So I've actually tweaked the ground bait this time to make it a lot stickier, a lot heavier, so it doesn't have quite as many particles coming off it. As you can see there, a really nice dense mix that's going to go straight to the bottom. Last time I experienced a lot of problems with missed bites, fish coming up in the water, and generally causing a lot of problems. So I think what I want to do is try and catch those fish short, but also nail them to the bottom as best I can. The ground bait mix there's equal parts of Census Gross Guard on, 3000 bream and Census River. Again, even though it's a shallow lake, I'm using river to make sure it gets to the bottom, much in the same way that you'd use molehill soil or something like that. But there's plenty of binding property there, so there's hardly going to be any cloud. It'll go straight down and settle on the bottom, so I can use really positive rigs to catch them. In that, I'm just going to feed hemp and castor in large quantities, and as I say, I'm probably going to feed 3 balls of ground bait on that line and just fish it out and look to try and top it up quite regularly. Again, last time it was quite evident just how many fish were feeding. With the temperatures being up quite considerably by comparison today, I expect the fish to feed a lot more aggressive, so I'll probably have to top up that line, maybe a ball every half hour, something like that, but I'll just gauge it. There's going to be no loose feed over that line. Again, that'll be in line with the positive rigs that we'll run through when we're actually fishing. The only other line I'm going to fish, as I say, is down to my edge. I'm going to just loose feed a few maggots, again 5 metres. There's a nice little bay there, and that's going to give me plenty of chance to catch perch, especially the decent perch that we encountered last time, but also loads of roach and rudd and things like that. So hopefully I'll be able to keep bites coming all day there, should my other 2 ground bait lines dry up. Again, with it being down the edge, rather than fishing out in open water, there's going to be fish there straight away, so it's a line that I can go on as soon as I've fed my ground bait lines. And it also holds plenty of cover for better quality fish as well. So generally, where I can fish down the edge in a decent depth of water and loose feed, that's what I'd like to do this time of year. Bait wise, as I say, I've got the pellets for the bream line. The other components really just some dendrobinas, which might turn out, I've only got a few for hook baits, just in case we have to go for those big perch down the edge, say we're getting bitted out by small rudd or anything. I've got 1.5 pints of maggots, all reds, just to loose feed down there. And as I say, I'll probably use those for hook baits across the roach line just for speed. I've got casters and hemp, again great roach baits, plenty of feed to go in there. And I might also throw a few casters down the edge as well, if the small fish become too much of a problem down there. So that's the general plan of attack for today. I'll run through the rigs as we're fishing, but we'll get into the session now and just start feeding and see how we go on. Right, so we're now ready to start feeding the peg. It's about 9:30 in the morning now, so as I say, we'll probably fish till about 3:30. So straight away, as I say, we're going to fish it like a match. I'm going to feed my ground bait line short. Usual kind of thing of making sure that the ground bait ball's as big as the pole cup, just to make sure that it does go straight down, nice and accurate. As always, in line with the far bank marker, make sure you get to the end of the section of the pole, then just tap the bait in. So as I said, I'm going to feed 3 on this line. And you can see just how heavy that ball of ground bait is. Just making sure that it goes straight down to the bottom, because that's where I plan on catching the fish. I'm going to sort of fish it in a very similar way to how I fish the bread punch, is this. Using very positive rigs, making sure the ground bait gets straight to the bottom with as little cloud as possible. Because I do find that's the most effective way of catching roach when they are settled on the bottom. So that's the short line fed. Now I'm going to feed the long line. As you can see there, balls of ground bait, micro pellets. And I'm going to start with 3 of these on the long line. Just have to reach and get the other sections of pole. And throughout the course of the day, I'm going to be looking on this line just for any sort of signs of movement, bubbles, whatever it might be, that sort of give the game away that there might be 1 or 2 bream there. And just line up with the corner of a pallet on the far bank. Like I say, what I'm looking for on that line is just a few bubbles. I'm not too fussed if I don't catch on it, because I'd expect the bulk of my weight today to come from the short lines. Again, when you're catching roach, sort of a decent stamp, if it's 2, 3, 4 ounces a piece, and you're trying to build a weight like we are today, you need to be catching them as close to you as possible. As we learnt last time, there's no real point shipping out to 13 metres and sort of missing bites and waiting for indications. I definitely think, considering the depth is pretty much even on this lake all the way across, from pretty much a top kit out to 13 metres, there's no real virtue in fishing miles away from me. So that's that pellet line fed. So as you can see, that's all my ground bait lines sorted now. Just keep the other sections out of the way, and straight away I'm going to have a look on that line down the edge. Again, if it was the case of me fishing for carp down that edge, I probably wouldn't be doing this. I'd leave it till later on, but because we're after silver fishing a quick start, that's my plan of attack. So I'll just slip a single red maggot on the hook, but I'll just quickly run through the rig before we start. For this edge line, as you can see, it's about 5 metres down the edge, and we've got a really decent depth there, probably 4 and a bit foot. But I'm still using a very light rig because I'm loose feeding and fishing through the water, and obviously if there's big perch there, they obviously don't like resistance in a rig, so using a really light 4x10 Chianti is definitely the way to go for a line like this. I'll start from the bottom end and run up. The hook, as you can see there, is a little size 20 Drennan silverfish maggot hook. A nice small hook, perfect for, as the name indicates, using a single maggot on there. But it's a nice strong hook as well. Again, fishing down the edge and fishing for a lot of fish, nice little durable hook like that's ideal. Again, barbless pattern, and that's just 2095 Drennan suplex fluorocarbon, as you can see there. A line that I use pretty much all the time when I'm fishing on clearish venues or for roach or anything like that. So 6-inch hook length, and then onto 011 Guru Engage main line. You can see I've just got 4 number 10 shot on there, spaced out sort of in the bottom third of the rig, because I want to make sure it does get nearer the bottom, hopefully where some better fish will be, but it still gives me scope to catch through the water. I might spread them out or play around with them as the day goes on. And so I put the top end of the rig there. We've just got a little 4x10s Preston Chianti, nice short float, perfect for this kind of on the drop and edge fishing. and as I say, float that I've got a lot of faith in for this style of fishing. Up to a number 4 elastic there at the top end. Again, we're fishing for anything that swims. It's plenty powerful enough to catch decent perch. If we hook a carp, we've got a very slim chance of getting it out, but I wouldn't expect to catch them on this rig, although you never know, we might hook one today. As you can see there, nice short length of line between the float and the pole tip. Again, because I'm fishing near rushes and things like that, I want to have maximum control of the float, and again, when you're getting lots of quick bites, a shorter line just helps you hit a few more of them. So, as I say, I'll get loose feed, and I'm probably going to feed 5 or 6 maggots near enough constantly down that edge. And we'll just see if we can get a bite to start off the session. What I'm doing is just laying that rig into sort of, as you can see, like a bay in the reeds there. So that just allows the maggot to fall nicely up against that shelf. Depth-wise, I've got this set about an inch off bottom. There's a little bit of a bite there. First fish. About an inch off bottom, which seems perfect for catching pretty much anything that swims. Make sure you get nice positive bites, and again, if perch are there, you'll get a very positive bite off them when it's fished off the bottom like that. So as you can see today, speed's going to be a massive factor in how we go about trying to build this weight. So again, in summer I'd probably prefer to fish even closer to me, shallower water, and even fish whips on this particular lake. But what I'm looking to do is try and catch a decent stamper silverfish. So I think fishing down the edge is the way to go for that. There's a slightly better fish straight away. See, not entirely sure what it is, but pretty much straight away into the session we've hooked a decent fish. And these are what we're after on this line. Again, really nice stamp brooch. Well, actually it's a hybrid, that one. Probably about 4 or 5 ounces. Just seeing there, it's got a couple of maggots in his throat as well, so these are the fish that we're after to try and build a weight. So it's going to be a case of just getting into a really good rhythm today, especially with this style of fishing. I'll fish this probably for the first hour before I look on either of the ground bait lines. Just give those time to settle. Make sure I'm putting, you know, a decent stamp of fish in the net quite consistently. That's a good start. Within first 2 chucks, probably got, that's a much smaller fish that's just grabbed hold of it that time. Probably got a good sort of 7 ounces or so in the net. So if we can keep this up through the course of the session, the odds are we can put a half decent weight together. Again, there's the odd fish having a go at it. So hopefully as we get a bit more loose feed into the peg, they'll start to feed more confidently, and if we're lucky, as I say, we'll hopefully encounter 1 or 2 decent perch along the way. See, smaller fish there's just nicked the maggot off the hook. So again, on this line, I've always got the option to switch to feeding hemp and castor instead if I'm getting bitted out by really small fish. Later on we may even try a section of worm or something like that over the top. A good bait on a line like this can just be the head of a dendrobina. Again, really durable bait, so you can catch multiple fish on it. One thing I'll definitely be taking note of as well in an area of the peg like this, if it does go quiet for a couple of minutes, I will be sitting it out for a bite just in case there's a decent perch just pulled out of a fish there. Because very often the fish like the roach and things that you'll be getting bites off will sit there, and as soon as a decent perch does move into the peg, they'll scatter and you won't get any bites. But for a couple of minutes, if you just wait, you'll end up hooking something half decent, which hopefully we'll manage to do a bit later on. One thing you might be able to notice as well is how I've got my pole roller or a flatbed roller sat right behind me as well, just to sort of speed up the process of shipping in and out. Again, in summer I'd probably look to fish in front of me directly and not have to break down the pole at all, fish heavier elastics, but again this time of year I want to make sure I'm getting every fish in. So just having that pole roller behind me allows me to ship back nice and quick without having to look behind me, and then very easily locate the roller and just fish, as I say, nice and simple with 5 metres of pole. There's another half decent fish. As you can see as well, I've got the elastic tightened up quite a bit just to make sure I can swing these better stamp roach to hand as well. Again, fishing like this I want to get as much weight as I possibly can in the net before I look for better fish over my ground bait lines. Again, hopefully with the water temperature being quite low, as I say, I've tested it when I've been mixing my ground bait, I would expect quite a lot of fish to be sat nearer the bottom today. So again, another reason why I've not set up any shallow rigs, because if I do expect to catch a lot of fish, I think a lot of them will feed on the bottom, especially over the ground bait lines. So I don't want to be trying to sort of draw them up in the water with loose feed when they might not want to do that. Another decent fish. Another nice stamp roach. So you can see if I'm catching fish of this quality each drop in, it won't take that long to build a half decent weight. So as long as I can sort of top up with some slightly larger fish as the session goes on, could definitely have been for a decent weight today. Again, in summer, if I was fishing a line short like this, I'd probably go for a bigger hook pattern and look to swing those size fish as well. But I think today, just to maximise my chance of catching some bonus fish, I'm using slightly lighter elastics, finer lines, and just trying to tempt those warier fish where possible. So like I've said, I'll crack on with this for the first hour, and then as soon as that hour's gone, whatever weight I've got, I'll look to go on the ground bait line short, and as I say, just keep an eye out for those bream on the longer line just to see. See, straight away here it looks like this line's gone a bit quiet as well. So what I will do is just wait a little bit longer for a bite if I have to. Again, it might mean that there's a slightly better stamp fish that's moved into the peg. Whether it's a perch or not, I'm not sure. Just missed a little bit of an indication there as well. You can see the area of the peg that I'm fishing here is really sort of perfect for this style of fishing. There's a sort of a bay in the reeds with plenty of depth, and it just looks like an ideal holding area for these fish. Again, with the reed beds being either side as well, it's a perfect place for perch to drift in and out, and obviously ambush any fish that are down there. See, that area of the peg's definitely gone quiet already. So what I'll do is I'll sit it out for a couple of minutes just to see if I hook a bonus fish. On a line like this as well, especially when you're fishing maggots, lifting and dropping can be very useful as well, so that'll be something I'll look to employ as the session goes on. Right, so the first hour's nearly up. We've had a decent start to the session. We've had a couple of quiet spells on this line, but caught a really decent stamper roach, averaging probably 4 ounces or so. We've got a couple of little rudd as well, a couple of little hybrids. So the session's going well, but as I say, we've had a couple of little quiet spells on this line. Certain that it's where better fish has moved into the peg, possibly a perch or a carp, not entirely sure. It's a decent fish on now. And the bites have become a little bit finicky as well as time's gone on. Obviously we've started hooking a few more fish, which meant they've become a little bit more wary. It's another one of these nice stamp roach. Probably one of the bigger ones of the session so far, that. Got plenty of energy still in him. So what I'm going to do is rest that line there just for an hour or so while I have a go on the short pole line for the roach, just see if there's anything that's settled there. If there's nothing on the line in front of me at 5 metres of my ground bait, then what I'll do is go back on this short line. And as I say, sporadically through the day I'll have a check on that bream line just to see if there's anything there. But I'll quickly run you through what rigs I'm using on this short 5 metre line. So I've got 3 rigs set up to use on that line, and all ranging sort of in terms of how I think the fish will be feeding, starting from a very light one set about a foot off bottom to one that's on the deck, and then one really heavy one. So I'll quickly run through them. As you'll be able to see, there's the lightest rig here, number 4 elastic in the top end, and I'm using one of these Sensus SA2 pencil floats. Float that I use all the time for my roach fishing. You'll see me use these for bread punch, as I was saying, and a float that settles really nice and quick, nice short bristle, and just seems to be perfect for catching roach as well. With it being a slim pattern, when I'm striking through it, there's less resistance on the float as well, so I can use a lighter elastic. All I've got on there is a bulk, and then just 4 number 11 droppers down to a 6-inch hook length, of 095 Drennan suplex fluorocarbon, again to a size 20 silverfish maggot hook. This rig I've actually got set about a foot off bottom, which is quite useful when you are catching roach over ground bait, because sometimes you'll get some bigger, warier fish sat over the ground bait that don't really want to go down and pick up samples off the bottom. The next rig is basically a stepped up version of that with a 4B18 float. Exactly the same, 4 elastic in the top, but this time the bulk's set a bit further down. I've just got 2 number 10 droppers in this case. Again, set nice and tight to the bottom. As I was alluding to earlier, feeding positive and fishing positive is probably the way to go to catch these roach at speed today. So this rig will settle nice and quick, and then a couple of heavy droppers to register the bites, and exactly the same hook length as the previous rig. The other rig that I've got set up for this line is in case the fishing's really good. Hopefully, if we're lucky today, we might end up getting onto this rig and catching a lot of fish. The idea with this is it's more sort of like a bream rig, but very heavy. So at the top end we've got double 5, because with this rig I'll be looking to swing pretty much everything I hook on that line up to sort of a pound. Moving down, we've got 011 Guru Engage main line, again exactly the same as the other two, nice and light, because we are still fishing for roach, but the float's different in this case. We've got a Sensus Toscana, which is a nice rugby ball style float, quite a thin bristle. Again, when you're roach fishing you want something that's still quite fine, but the main thing's the capacity. It's a gram, so as you'll see now I've got a really nice heavy bulk down at the bottom, very close to the hook length. So again, that's most of the gram in that bulk there, and then just 2 number 10 hook droppers above exactly the same hook length, but this time down to a size 18 silverfish maggot hook. Larger pattern hook again, because you want some more purchase when you're trying to swing those better fish. But as I say, I'll try and alternate between these 3 rigs just to see exactly what I can catch. I'd expect to catch most of the fish on the middle rig. If it's a bit harder, the lighter rig fishing off the bottom, and if the fishing's really good and I'm looking to swing a lot of fish to hand, this is the rig that I'll pick up and really try to build the weight. So as I say, we'll have a look on that line now. What I'm going to do is start on the middle of the 2 rigs, the 4B18 pencil float, just with a single maggot on the hook, just to see what's down there. Again, if it's difficult I can always go into the lighter rig, and if it's really good I can always go into the heavier rig, so it's just giving myself a couple of options. So as usual, just getting to that far bank marker, and like I do with my bread punch rig, I'm lowering that olivetting, or the bulk, sorry, directly beneath where I'm looking to fish. Again, going to loose feed a few maggots down to that left hand side just to keep the few fish that are there feeding. And that was a bite straight away. So again, if the bites start being really finicky, I can always go on that lighter rig, and with it being set off bottom, they'll be much more positive. Or again, I've always got the option to move on to that heavier rig. There we go, first fish over that ground bait. Not entirely sure what it is, but it's definitely a decent stamp fish. It's actually a skimmer. Oh, just pulled out of him there. That's a really good start on that line. Not sure whether it was fairly hooked, but it just shows there's a few decent stamp fish down there already. Quite strange that I fed it like this, but on the last session that we did here trying to catch the skimmers, barely hooked any. So if we're lucky, there might be one or two better bream that crop up over this line. Again, while that float's settling, just going to feed some maggots down to my left hand side. Then hopefully it won't be too long before we get another bite on this line. Again, because I've let it settle for an hour, I'd expect the fish to start to feed really confidently. It's a bit of an indication straight away. And that's a roach this time. These are what I would expect to catch on this line. Sort of decent-ish stamp roach. These are the ones that we've also been catching down the edge as well. So again, catching a stamper fish like that, I'd expect to still manage 15 to 20 pounds over the course of the day catching fish of that size, especially with them feeding more aggressively hopefully as the session goes on. But if we start to encounter one or two bonus fish like big perch and decent bream, that's when we can really start to sort of boost our weight. So as always, when you're fishing, sort of trying to fish at speed, it's about just getting into a decent rhythm, keeping your other lines fed, and then just trying to work out how you can catch the fish as quick as possible. Again, one thing I might do is just trim this float to dot it down a little bit more, just in case the fish are being really finicky. That's another half decent fish again. Not entirely sure what it is yet. That's another nice sized roach. These are more like the fish we're after on that line. Good sort of 8-10 ounce fish, really nice stamp. And those are the kind of fish that will go 2 to the pound very comfortably and start to really build you a weight if you can catch them quickly. Again, just catching the fish on single red maggot on the hook. I don't really want to go to caster if I have to, because that'll just slow down the process, and obviously when you're using caster on the hook it does get bust a lot quicker than a maggot, so with maggot you get a few more chances to hit the bites that you're getting. Again, just a few more maggots down that edge. There's a smaller fish this time. Not really what we're after, but again it's still another ounce or two in the net. So you can see obviously with the style of fishing like this, if I can get into a good rhythm while I'm lowering the bulk in, feed a few maggots down to my left hand side, then concentrate on this float, you can see how quickly you can get into a decent rhythm and start to put a weight together. Again, I'll go by the bites that I'm getting as to how much to top up on this line or whether to top up at all. But it's a good sign that I'm getting bites so quickly after feeding 3 balls of ground bait. So like I've said, with this rig I've got it set pretty much at dead depth. Again, with decent sized roach they can be quite finicky in terms of the bites. So I think setting a rig like this at dead depth is the way to go. Then obviously having a rig either side of that in terms of one that's heavier that's set about 2 inches over depth and one that's set about 6 to 12 inches off the bottom. And that's another fish on there now. Another one of these small skimmers. Let's get a nice sized fish to catch these. He's got himself wrapped up in the line a little bit. But noticeably today, a lot of the fish that I've caught have been hooked well down, so they're feeding really well. So whether that's down to the increased temperatures or just feeding the peg correctly, not entirely sure, but it's really reassuring when you are catching fish like this. Shows that when you are stopping getting bites, that there's nothing wrong with the rig or anything. It's just the fact that the fish have moved off, so that gives me a clue towards later if bites do start to dry up. I can be quite confident in feeding another ball of ground bait on this line should I need to. As you can see, we've not caught anything massive yet, but it's always just putting a few ounces in the net. As long as the fish are averaging 3 or 4 to the pound, then it doesn't take long to build a decent weight. As I say, hopefully as the session goes on we might encounter a few bigger fish. Right, so we're getting into a few fish on this short ground bait line. It's definitely going well, the session so far. As I said, we had a good first hour over the edge line down to my left hand side, catching a variety of fish, but mainly roach, decent stamp as well, so I know I can always go back to that. So I'm going to keep loose feeding it. Interestingly there though, we did have a couple of quiet spells where I'm sure a better fish was in the peg. But this line here seems to be really quite consistent. As soon as the float's going in and getting settled, I'm starting to get bites on the bottom, which I think is definitely down to the ground bait mix and using positive rigs. As I say, last time I was missing a lot of bites, whereas today it's quite the opposite. I'm landing a lot more fish. That's a much smaller stamp than what we were catching earlier on this line. As I say, we're always ticking over putting fish in the net. So hopefully as the session goes on, we'll keep putting these sort of decent stamp fish in the net, building a good weight, but what we'll plan to do is sort of keep you updated as to what we're doing in terms of rotating the lines, and also if we hook any bonus fish as well, like decent bream, decent perch, or even bigger roach perhaps. And you never know, with the temperatures being up, we might be lucky and catch a crucian or two, but we'll just have to see. So I say we'll crack on with this now and keep you updated. There we go. Right, we've just hooked a better fish now on this margin line. What I've done interesting there is just sort of lay the rig in against the bank a bit more rather than out towards where I was loose feeding. And after a couple of seconds we've just had a really positive bite. I'm not entirely sure what it is yet. No, it's just come off. It's really interesting that, because we just had a little quiet spell. So I'm just trying this while I'm resting that ground bait line at 5 metres. I've topped it up again, and interesting, the fish there are also going through the bait really quickly. Having to top that line up every sort of 45 minutes, something like that, and going on it after 15 minutes seems to be the best bet. Seems to catch a couple of quick fish while the ground bait's just breaking up, and then another couple of decent fish about half an hour into the ground bait breaking up, and that's when it starts to tail off then again. Catch a few fish, go back on this line after topping it up, and just rotating those two. So what I'm going to do again is just try and lay this rig in the same way that I did last time. So unfortunately we just pulled out of that fish there. Not sure whether it was a better skimmer or perhaps a decent perch, to be honest. I'm just going to lay that rig in against the bank a bit more. So again, it seems that a lot of the sort of roach and smaller fish are lying away from the reeds, and just in this bay here seems to be where that better fish was sitting. So I'm just going to try that exact same tactic again and just see if we can hook another one. Bit of a shame we lost that one though, because it felt like a really good fish, that. No, it's just another roach this time. Again, not a bad fish. Definitely far smaller than whatever we just hooked and lost. As you can see, another really good stamp fish, and these are what we're trying to build our weight with today. Catching similar kind of size fish on both the edge line and over the ground bait, and just rotating the two to keep fish coming consistently seems to be the key today. Again, had a couple of looks on that pellet line long and had a couple of little skimmers, but again, I don't think they're really going to turn up there today, to be honest. It's definitely not the most productive way of going about building the weight, I don't think. Might be that later on one or two better bream move in there, but we'll just have to wait and see. Again, I'm going to persevere with this tactic of lowering the hook bait in rather than laying it in against this edge line. Hopefully we'll end up hooking one or two better fish again. But it just shows the difference it can make to lay your rig in differently. Just presenting the bait differently to the fish. You can often sort of fool a better stamp fish doing that. Like I said, that when you're fishing little size 20 hooks like we are today, there's no guarantee that you're going to land those bigger fish. I've just hooked one there as well. It's come off. I think I might have to step up in hook size to an 18s if this carries on. That was a much better fish, that one as well. So hopefully we haven't spooked it. So I'll keep persevering with this while the ground bait's settling. Hopefully we can land one of these bigger fish that I've been hooking. Again, definitely just sort of lowering that rig in seems to be the way to go on this line. So that's twice I've done it and twice I've hooked a better stamp fish. Again, I've been consistently feeding 5 or 6 maggots and a few casters over this line all day. So there's plenty of bait down there to hold better fish. There's one on now. Again, really going to take my time with this. Just plodding around at the moment, not entirely sure what it is. It's almost fighting like a bream. There's one of these decent perch. These are the bonus fish we're after down there. Amazing the difference to lay that rig in. I'll just sort of drop it in vertically rather than lay it in, and straight away we've hooked a lovely, lovely perch there. Really fat fish, that one. Again, they might be looking to spawn soon, certainly by the looks of that one. But a really good weight builder. So I think I'll see if there's one or two more down there while that ground bait line's settling. Again, clearly there's quite a few down there if I've managed to lose two and still hook one quite quickly. They just sat up that marginal slope a bit nearer the reeds than the roach and other fish. So clearly the smaller silverfish are just sat well away from those better perch. And small fish on there. The perch are clearly just sort of drifting out from that reed bed to either pick up a couple of maggots or potentially attack some of the bait fish that are in the peg. Again, because of the depth, about 4.5 feet deep there, we wouldn't see any bait fish scatter. But it certainly did look like a good area when I came to the peg initially. Somewhere that would definitely hold a few perch. Just seems absolutely perfect for them. So I'm just laying that rig in probably a foot or so nearer to the reeds than I was earlier. Just seeing if one or two have backed off in there. Again, if I hook another one quite quickly, what I'll do is just leave that area of the peg, keep feeding it and allow them to settle back down there again. There we go. This is a good fish. Not sure whether he's just snagged me on a reed. Oh, starting to come up now. Again, just having to negotiate them around the reed bed that's to my left. Now, it's a nice roach, this one though, this time. Thought it was a little bit larger fish because it just got me snagged slightly on a little bit of the reed bed, but still lovely stamped fish. So there are one or two roach even drifting close to the reeds as well. So I know there's a few perch in here up to 2 or 3 pounds, so even a fish like that's at risk. So it tells me if I'm catching roach really close to the reeds that those perch might have moved off for a short while. But again, just by topping up with bait, it's going to draw smaller fish in and also draw the perch in as well. So certainly towards the back end of the session, as the light levels start to drop, I'll have to keep employing this sort of tactic of lowering the rig in instead of laying it in down this edge, and just see if one or two of those bigger perch will turn up then as well. There we go. There's another good fish on this line. Again, could be another one of these perch. So I'm just having to steer it away from the snags. Again, just had to wait a little longer for that bite. Doing exactly the same, just sort of lowering that hook bait in. And it is another nice perch. A bit bigger than the last one, this one. Might be a pound if we're lucky. But a fantastic bonus fish, that. You can see just nailed right in the bottom lip. Throat's absolutely full of maggots as well with this one. It's always worth checking them, that. Once he stopped thrashing about, just pop the hook out, get him in the net. But a lovely bonus fish down that edge. So again, there might be one or two more down there than I thought initially. So that's 2 that I've lost and 2 that I've landed. All of the good size as well, and those are really the bonus fish that we're after today. If we can catch a few bream, that'd be really good. But those decent sized perch count for 2 or 3 of the roach that we've been catching. So again, well worth waiting that extra minute or so for the bite for. Again, it shows because they're mopping up the maggots as well, that the bait fish or the small silvers like roach and little hybrids and rudd are definitely scattering away from them. And those perch just picking up any maggots that drift close enough to the reeds. So that's a really useful little thing to pick up with something like this. It's not like they're just drifting in and going after the bait fish or the silvers. They're sat there eating the maggots as well. So I say we'll keep rotating the lines now. Hopefully catch 1 or 2 more bonus perch if we're lucky. And as I say, keep adding more and more weight to that net until hopefully we get a decent net by the end of the day. So I'll crack on with this now. Right, so we're about 4 hours into the session now, and as you can see, we're getting into a few more fish. Interestingly, I've pretty much discounted that pellet line long, because these 2 short lines have been just really, well, they've really fished well, to be honest. Especially down to the left, I've had a good consistent run of decent stamped roach as well, and interestingly, just by laying the rig in sort of the opposite way, so instead of laying it against the shelf, I've been laying it sort of away from it a little bit more. I've managed to catch a couple more perch and a few decent roach doing that. And that's given me plenty of time to feed and rest this line as well, so just by alternating between the 2, I've managed to keep a good run of fish going. Just get the hook out of this one. A lot of the fish have been hooked well down as well, so it shows how confident they're feeding today. But what I've been doing is just topping up 1 ball of ground bait every 40 minutes or so on this short line as well, and it's amazing just how quickly the fish are going through it. And certainly the best rhythm as well has been to leave that line for about 15 minutes or so after topping up, nearer 20 minutes sometimes. Just fishing those 20 minutes down to my left hand side, then going back on this ground bait line, and the stamp fish has just generally increased the more bait that I've put in each time, so hopefully we'll have a good last 2 hours of the session and really put a good weight together. And if we're lucky, as I say, we'll hopefully get a few more perch out of that left-hand margin as well. But the session's going really well at the moment, and the weight's certainly been building nicely. I've even caught a couple of skimmers over this short line as well, which is good. As you can see, I'm fishing the heavier rig as well, and that's purely down to the number of fish down there and just the amount of bites that I am getting. This positive rig seems to be the best way to catch them, and as I say, with that double 5 elastic I can very easily swing these roach into hand. So again, just speeding up the whole process. So I think for the last couple of hours of the session, what I'll do is just rotate these 2 lines. Hopefully we'll get into a few extra decent fish if we're lucky, sort of bonus bream or perch. But really, as long as we're putting fish in the net all through the session, we should have a really good weight by the end of the day. So I'll keep cracking on with this, rotate the lines, and as I say, we'll update you if we start hooking a few better stand fish. There's something. Right, I've just hooked a good fish now on the lightest rig right down the edge. This could be a carp. It's just very steadily swum out the swim there as I've hooked it. Nice positive bite. I'm just going to have to take this really carefully. Yeah, I do think this is a carp. We're only on a very light number 4 elastic here. Little size 18 hook, so we're going to have to be very careful with it. But the peg just went quiet there for a short while, and the float's absolutely buried. What I think I'm going to have to do with this fish is just sort of leave it in open water a little bit. As you can see there, we'll do well to land this, especially on a very light number 4 elastic. So obviously when you do hook a fish like this late on in a session as well, just important to take your time, especially with these carp. Don't want to pull them too hard, because the harder you pull them, especially on light gear, they'll pull back a lot harder. But that's what I'd suspect it to be honest. If it's a perch or anything like that, then it's a very big perch. Again, just trying to play it in open water as best I can. So this fish is just sort of plodding through the ground baited area as well, which I'm going to look to switch to, but as I say, there's probably only half an hour or so left in the session. This isn't ideally what we're looking to catch, but again, just one of those things. There's not that many carp in this lake by comparison to a lot of commercials. So I'm quite surprised to hook one, being that it's been mainly roach and decent perch down that left hand edge. Well, I'll say decent perch, we've hooked 2 or 3 today. Only managed to land 2. But down that edge, the mainstay of fish has been decent roach, about sort of 5-6 ounces, a few bit bigger than that as well. But yeah, this will be very interesting to see if we can land this fish on such light gear. Again, frustratingly, I've not even got this on a puller kit either, so it's going to have to be a case of probably playing the fish on a top 3, or, well, say top 4, top 5, possibly in the air. Again, just being really careful with it. So the last thing I want to do is have this fish really bolt off and bottom out the elastic. Again, really going to have to take my time with this. Not sure how long this will take me to land it, if I do land it, but it should be quite a while. Just going to loose feed a few more maggots down that edge. But this would explain why the peg went quiet for a short while. Again, a little tip when you're playing fish like this is just to take the pole apart one section at a time. The last thing you want to do is break right down to your top kit and then have to try and add all the sections together again to chase the fish out. Just taking it one section off at a time is the best way to play fish like this. And it really is hugging the bottom, this one. Again, just being really careful with it, just waiting for it to swim in smaller and smaller circles. So the interesting bit will be whether we can even get its head up with such light gear on. So again, even though we're still playing the fish, just keep a bit of bait trickling in on each line. So it looks like we could be here for a while with this one. There's also one or two barbel in this lake as well, so it could be one of those. It's the first time I've seen the float. Again, obviously if I was on a puller kit, even with an elastic as light as this, I would probably be able to bully this fish just a little bit more, being that we're still on a size 18 hook. But again, it's all about keeping things really steady with fish like this. See if we can just get him to roll over. Yeah, it's a nice little linear mirror carp, this about £2 or £3. This is the problem, as soon as you get their heads up with an elastic like this, it doesn't take them much effort to get back down in the water. There we go. It's a little bit bigger than I expected, this one. Still a lovely little fish. So we'll just slip the hook out of him. See if we can show him to camera. Definitely not a bad little fish to catch on a number 4 elastic, that one. It's a little carp, probably, as I say, £2 and a bit, something like that. But a cracking little fish. Let's get him popped back. Right, so we're now down to the last 15 minutes of the session. As you've just seen, we've had a nice little carp there, about 2 or 3 pound down the edge. So what I'm going to do is just leave that now and just concentrate on the ground bait line for the last sort of 10 or 15 minutes. Hopefully, if we're lucky, we might encounter a bream or maybe some more roach. So I'm just going to loose feed a couple of maggots over the top of that line, a few down the edge just in case. As I say, I probably put in a ball of ground bait on this line about half an hour ago, so that should have broken up and should leave me a decent amount of feed on the bottom to try and catch a few last fish over. Just a bit of an indication there. Interestingly, for that sort of 40 minutes of the session, the pegs really kind of slowed up a bit. We still managed to keep a few fish going into the net, a few roach, a few little hybrids and the odd little skimmer as well off this line. But really it's kind of slowed up. So I'll quickly summarise what we've really done today. There's another nice little fish. It's just come off that time. So today what I've really done is concentrate on these two lines. My edge line to my left, which has probably produced, I'd say, nearly half the fish, maybe a bit more actually, and this short 5 metre line. I've effectively left the pellet line long, as we've had a couple of little skimmers over it, but it never looked like it was going to really get going, and we were having to wait a while for bites on that line. So again, I made sure I put it well out of the way, so it was sort of a shot to nothing really. And it's not really affected the other two lines, but definitely the best two lines have been these two, and I've fished them, I say, quite effectively today, I think. I've had plenty of fish down the left hand margin and even managed to catch a couple of nice perch and a lot of roach as well. And fishing in front of me, it's amazing just how much ground bait these fish have gone through. Topping up every sort of 45 minutes to an hour, leaving it 20 minutes and fishing down the edge, and then coming back to it and catching a steady run of fish till the stamp of fish started to drop to a smaller kind of size. And then just repeating the process for the best part of, well, since probably the first hour of the session onwards. And that's really helped us keep ticking over, kept us putting fish in the net, and made sure that when we have been catching fish, the stamp's been generally quite good. Certainly a lot better than that last one that I've just had there. So we've had a few skimmers, as I say, a few hybrids, but the bulk of the fish have been roach and a couple of perch. We've even had that little carp and also a little F1 ghost carp as well, which is one of the new stockings in here. So as I say, we've had a fantastic little session today, so I'll try and finish on a fish. I think we'll call this the last one of the session, then have a look at what we've caught and weigh them in. Another nice little skimmer. So as I say, we'll call this the last one of the session. Nice little fish to end on that, good stamp to add to the keep net. Pop them in the net and we'll have a look at what we've caught and weigh them in. Right, so as you can see there, that's our final net of fish. Fantastic net of fish, weighing just over 29 pounds there in 6 hours fishing. As I say, we've caught all these fish pretty much at 5 metres in front of us and down the edge, using very light rigs down the edge, which has been a key to catching a decent stamp of roach. As you can see, that's probably about the average size that we've managed down the edge, and certainly fishing to covers helps us do that. Fishing in front of us, we've fed plenty of ground bait, kept topping up, and that's managed to catch us some nice little skimmers and a real mixed bag. Say mainly roach, even a little F1 carp in there, and as I say, a few rudd and a couple of nice perch as well. Not managed to catch any of the massive perch down the edge like we wanted, but again, it's just one of those things. But a fantastic net of fish to catch on a winter's day. So again, hopefully there's 1 or 2 things that you can take away from today's session. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you on that next episode.